because he has so much good information, and we could all listen to him for hours. So it's going to be short. My portion is going to be short. Like Andrea said, we are all the militia. Every one of you is the militia. So please, if you're county coordinator, or step up to be the county coordinator for your county, and we got to start building our local county militias. So I will be going into that in more detail this next week and contacting all the current contacts for the counties. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Andrea and our featured guest.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, welcome everybody. I'm going to ask everyone to stay muted so that we have clear communication with our special guest today. Also want everyone, if they can, next to their name, if you could say your first name and then what county you're on, so we can have an idea of who in the state of California is represented. And like Matt said, we would love two representatives in each county so that you can work together to start your community work. And next week we're going to be going through 4 steps that you can take to get your community more involved. And without further ado, I'd love to recommend. Well, I am recommending him because
welcome.
Welcome. This certified functional medicine expert, Sean Ephraim, has been. The reason why I wanted to have him on, and Sean, I think we can hear something in your background, or Ephraim, whichever word you prefer. Somebody's got some noise in their background. Michael Folk, can you mute yourself, please?
Yes, hello. I'm recently declared. I did join the militia, so I'm here, at your service. So I just want to say hello. I just got declared a living soul about a week ago.
Thank you, Michael. That's wonderful. And
thank you.
I'm going to announce our guest speaker today, and I'm going to ask you to mute so that we can speak with Ephraim, who is a certified functional medicine expert. I had him read my blood, and I was so impressed and changed by what I learned in the time I spent with him that I wanted to have him on as a guest to share with you what he knows about blood and what you can learn more about your body. I know we have a lot of bullet points of information that we can cover about the ranges in blood, about the importance of blood types and anemias, the importance of water and its role in the blood. There's so many great things. This man is so knowledgeable. We're going to enjoy what he has to share with us, and we're going to start at the top of that list after we say hello. Welcome, Ephraim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Andrea and Matt, for all that you do and all the participants that are watching. Thank you for really being just a beacon of light, inspiration, and hope. Thank you for guiding this assembly in the direction of truth and freedom during these crazy times.
My pleasure.
May I butt in for a moment? May I record this?
Who's this?
It will be recorded. I don't know if people can record off of this, but it will be recorded and simulcast. Right now it's being simulcast, and it will be on our website after, so you'll have access to it.
Let me say one thing real quick. There's a few of you that I've had to mute several times. You keep unmuting yourself. Please stop unmuting yourself. We need to keep it quiet, so our guest speaker will be able to speak with it being quiet. At the end, we'll open it back up. But please stop unmuting yourselves, or we'll have to remove you eventually, and I don't want to do that. So.
Okay, so this body is a vehicle, right? It's a machine, and this machine has vital parts in it that make it run efficiently. And blood work is the manual to this machine and can determine how those parts are operating, if you know how to properly translate blood, that is. So that's what I do. I navigate through blood work, and I can see things coming years in advance. unfortunately, the major corporations that have destroyed our rightful laws, right? Our land, our air, our water, which, by the way, I have the solutions for all three, are the same corporations that are in bed with the corporations that establish what is called the reference range or the interval range on a blood test.
Which is on the corner, like when you get your blood results on the right-hand side, it will say between 8 and 10. You know, that's the range he's talking about. And he's going to point out the importance of what you don't hear from your medical doctor. And Ephraim, one last thing is, since this is recorded and on a YouTube channel, we want to do our best to use language that keeps us from having that pulled down. So,
sure.
Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, these scales are what are called crisis ranges because they go from critical low to critical high. And 95% of the blood tests that I see are totally incomplete and fail to prevent any potential disease that's trending into crisis. So I don't know if you guys can guess what corporations set these ranges, but if you're thinking the insurance companies, bingo, because you guys can guess the ones that set these reference ranges. And the insurance company is a pretty powerful entity, or they like to think that they are. I mean, they tell the governments what to do. They run advertisements like crazy. In fact, we're the only country that allow that to happen. And so all the labs are scrutinized by the good old insurance corporations. And so it's quite a monopoly. In America, there's something called the normal range, which is really an exaggerated scale that's set by the insurance company. So if you're in this normal range, you're virtually guaranteed to develop some sort of health problem. So they establish these incredibly wide reference ranges, like 1 to 100. And if you're inside that 1 to 100 range, you're not considered sick enough. And the crazy thing is the insurance companies, they get to hold on to that money. So the reference scale is critical low to critical high, right? Like 1 to 100. So if the number is 2 or if the number is 98, you're still normal. The number has to literally hit 1 or hit that 100, and then it gets flagged critically low or critically high. That's what I call crisis care. So the reference ranges are set by the insurance companies. No matter how you look at it, at the end of the day, it's a business. It's about money. It's about profit. It's about cost containment. It justifies the need for drugs. So as long as you remain inside their reference range, the insurance company said they're going to keep their money because they're not going to pay a doctor to drug a number that hasn't gone out of range and into crisis. So the number has to flag before it gets any attention. Meanwhile, you got all kinds of individuals that are walking around with numbers that are in this normal range, but they're also heading into crisis. They're trending in that direction. So why read it? Why even talk about it? Because all you're going to hear from the doctor is, everything looks fine, I'll see you next year, because you're considered in this normal range, which is also based on the health of the population. But that's not good enough. The health of the population is not good enough. So most of these numbers that you'll see on your blood test, which are 95% incomplete, may be in range. But again, on a scale of 1 to 10, you could be a 2 or you could be an 8, and you'd still be considered normal. So these ranges aren't good enough. We want a number. For example, body temperature, 98.6. That's the temperature of the body, right? But the insurance company will set a reference range for that, 90 to 110. But the optimal number is 98.6. And if it's not, then there's usually a story behind that. So I go through the blood and I make little marks, I make little clues, right? I play Inspector Gadget, Pink Panther. I got my magnifying glass and I look for what the bottom line is. You know, what explains all of these numbers? Is it an infection? Are we anemic? Is it fungal? Is it a virus? Is it parasitic? What's the matter with this picture? So the message I want to drive home is that the reference ranges that you see off to the right of a blood test or the interval scales, these are hospital ranges. They're not nutritional ranges. And in socialized medicine countries, you know, the ranges are very small. They're very narrow. But here in America, the ranges are very big and wide because it justifies drugs. And when the number flags critically low or critically high, now they're authorized to sell the medication, and that's what it's all about. If the number doesn't flag, the insurance company gets to keep its money.
And when the number
Wait,
flags
what's happening there?
critically
And
low,
they can't sell the drug.
now they're authorized to sell the medication, and that's what it's all about. If they're
So these are the corporations that tell the government what to do. They don't like to do preventative medicine. America is the only country in the world where drug companies can run advertisements on television because illness is extremely profitable, but nowhere else on the planet it's like this. So remember, if you're in the normal range, you're pretty much guaranteed to develop some sort of health problem or two or three. But in a blood test, if you know how to translate it, if you know how to navigate through it, it looks everywhere. It looks into livers, it looks into brains, it looks into all the parts that are inside this machinery, right? Your organs and your glands. It looks into thyroids, into the immune system, everywhere. So I go through it and I make little notes of any testy little numbers, and I collect all these clues, and I try to find what the bottom line is and identify which plug is out of the wall.
Ephraim.
And usually the story begins with your blood type. And, you know, I'm surprised to learn that so many people out there don't even know what blood type they are.
No, isn't that crazy? It's so funny.
It is. And so there's a very little regard to it that you hear about. But there are 4 types. And type 1 is the O blood type. Type 2 is the A blood type. Type 3 is the B blood type. And type 4 is the AB blood type. But it's rare today for people to be in a good condition without proper and intellectual guidance, living in this crazy country where you don't get any guidance, just going by what you think you should eat and what you think you should drink and what supplements you think you should be taking. So regardless of how much research one does, without proper translation and optimal numbers from blood work, how are you going to know how much iron you have? How are you going to know how much thyroid you need? Or vitamin B12 or vitamin D or vitamin C or LMNOP? I mean, or if the blood is adequately hydrated. Because you don't get any conversation out of your doctor about hydration. You don't get any conversation out of your doctor about mycology, the study of yeast and fungus, or parasitology. All you get is antibiotics, which is fungus. And a little bit of fungus can kill a little bit of bacteria, but a lot of it can kill you. And so what makes bread rise is yeast. And that makes the tissue rise. It enlarges the tissue. Any false growth or malignancy or tumor, you can take it out. And at the base of it, you'll find fungus and yeast. So what started out as fungus and yeast can easily translate into a virus or cancer. It could break the DNA and it can go haywire. And we develop most of these early on in life. Just the simple act of drinking with your meal. So I don't recommend ever drinking with your meals or even after the meal. I would say wait about an hour because you got to let the body digest. Digestion is a huge topic. But I like to use the analogy of a chimney where the fireplace has got pepsin and hydrochloric acid to disinfect and masticate those foods into a chyme, nice fine liquid that can exit out of the sphincter into the small intestine where all the absorption takes place by those little finger hair-like projections that we call microvilli. That's the flora. And but when you start gulping with your meals, you prematurely stop that action of that chimney digesting, that fireplace digesting your foods out of the sphincter, now you have undigested food particles that are fermenting and rotting. And this is what can contribute to yeast and fungus very easily. You know, it's interesting, in Asia, they have tea, hot tea, and they sip on searing hot tea to help just with some saliva if they need it. But they're not sitting there with glasses and gulping with their meals because they know better.
Can I just comment on that, Ephraim?
Please.
I have another friend that's a doctor that brought it to my attention to do 30 minutes before and after. And it was the first time I had been told about that. And you, after you read my blood, you said, give it an hour before you eat and after you eat. And I'm still applying that. And I noticed I never have indigestion if I adhere to that hour before and hour after. And as you pointed out, O's in particular have a lot of acid. And when we're watering it down, we're not allowing that to like break down our food. And so I thought that was a really great point and a simple thing everyone on this call can apply. Hey, take a look at the clock and at least 30 minutes before and after. Where we're in a society where the first thing they do is bring you liquid at a restaurant. Big glasses.
Yeah, big glasses. You know, we all picked up this habit from our parents. And it's, unless your parents specifically, you know, intervened and really grilled it into your consciousness not to do that, you get no instruction whatsoever. And so we're all in the same boat. But in the first half of your life, you could get away with a lot. In the second half, you know, that repeated pattern is forbidden. Especially if you're an A blood type, because you have very little acid as it is. And so you kind of shoot yourself in the foot when you consume liquids with your meals, or even after. You got to wait, you know, 30 to an hour at least before you start drinking again. Otherwise, we're going to have, you know, some fungus and some yeast in the blood. And that's kind of the beast that we're trying to reduce.
Don't you think everyone has an enormous amount of yeast and fungus in their systems because of sugar and other things? It's very common.
Absolutely. It's very common to see sweet blood. And yeast and bacteria and fungus, they proliferate rapidly when you have sweet blood. You know, it's very vampiric in that they love sweet blood, but the blood should be more bitter, you know, like that garlic to, you know, keep the parasitic organisms, you know, from colonizing. So you want the blood to be more bitter. Now, when I look at a blood test, I look at markers to determine how sweet the blood is, such as the triglyceride fats, the glucose, the insulin. And if you were to take sweet blood and put it in a petri dish, you know, overnight, it probably would puff into, you know, a ball of crystals or grow a dandelion or something.
Get out of here.
The blood should be pretty bitter and it should clot. If it doesn't, we're in trouble. But so the sweet blood keeps the toxicity going. Well, you can go on a diet that's sugar-free, but it's not going to fix the problem because the blood is already sweet.
So you probably have the rights, but yeah.
Okay, someone needs to mute.
Got it.
Okay, thanks.
Got it.
Keep going, Ephraim.
And so with that being said, you know, it's really about making the blood more bitter, more saline, like the amniotic fluids we were bathing in for a good amount of time, right? This is the consistency of what the blood should be, because it really prevents these pathogenic organisms from colonizing, right? But until then, we're just kind of beating a dead horse, you know? I mean, people are supplementing and they're taking diets and they don't know what they're doing. I like to target the blood and make it a little bit more saline, make it a little bit more, more bitter so that it's not so sweet. For example, the triglyceride fats should say 35, but of course the insurance company set a reference range that goes all the way up to 150. and of course the carbohydrates influence the triglyceride fats. And that influences the cardiac risk factor, which influences the plaque-forming cholesterol. And that's something we got to be very careful about, because it's not cholesterol that we need to be worried about. Because at the end of the day, cholesterol is like mayonnaise. Sure, you need it, like LDL, to repair arteries and veins with. The body made it for a reason. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make calcium and it doesn't make plaque, okay? It's mayonnaise. That's what total cholesterol is, which is one big number that's compiled with good and bad. So if you take the good out, which is the HDL, now you have a real number. Whereas before, total cholesterol used to be 300 before it was flagged to offset statin drugs and blood thinners. Sure, 300 could make it a little bit harder to push, right? So the blood pressure starts fluctuating and things. But at the end of the day, total cholesterol doesn't make plaque. It doesn't make calcium. It doesn't influence the cardiac risk factor for stroke or heart disease. That's the triglyceride fat, which they lump into the category of cholesterol to confuse the crap out of us. But triglyceride fat's a different animal. That comes from carbohydrate consumption. And thyroid has a big play in that. And a lot of people are hypothyroid. And so they can't metabolize the carbs like they once did when they were full of hormones and so forth. And so the triglyceride fat should say 35. And as it starts going towards 50, we start making lipoprotein A, right, which is the plaque-forming stuff. The varnish, I call it wallpaper because it's very sticky. And it makes occlusion and all this, that, and the other. But again, on a blood panel, I could see these things coming years in advance. I could see what direction these numbers are trending because I know where they belong. My mentor's German trained, and he's got a clinic up in North Hollywood called Pathways Medical, and it's the #1 vitamin IV clinic up there, and they're just instant gratification junkies over there. They're, constantly changing the chemistry with their special vitamin IV preparations that are proprietary. These are not pre-made. These aren't Myers cocktails. These are good toward targeting things specifically for the individual based on their blood results. This is the mentor that I took up my apprenticeship with there for a number of years and got to really see people's chemistry change. Prior to even...
So,
yes.
Yes. In particular, would they be able to, say you find out, you get a report back and your triglycerides are, double the 35, they're at 70. So they could put a cocktail together that could impact that in particular, the cholesterol level?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of things that go into it, obviously. As I mentioned, the thyroid, even exercise, so people that are consuming carbohydrates with a low thyroid and they're not exercising, any amount of carbohydrate you consume stacks and turns into a lot of triglyceride fat, which will elevate the plaque-forming cholesterol, which will elevate the cardiac risk factor for heart disease, as it's been #1 disease in America for, God, I don't know, 2-3 decades now. It's been trailing as the leading. And then the cardiologists, what do they say? They say, eat more low-fat foods. And I'm sorry, they say eat less low-fat food and eat more carbohydrates. I mean, it's the nuttiest thing I've ever heard. It's insane that the cardiologists are telling people to eat more carbs and less fat. Remember, cholesterol is mayonnaise. It never turns into plaque or calcium like triglyceride fat does, which comes from carbohydrate consumption. So I would say, that's what keeps the blood nice and rosied up. Maple syrup blood, honey blood. We don't want to the kidneys get freaked out by that. And you start making what's called uric acid, which humans don't make. Fungus makes it. And in most countries, socialized medicine countries, the range is 0 to 1. And they know if you have 1, you have fungus. But here in America, our range for uric acid is like 4 to 8. And you won't get a conversation out of the doctor about uric acid until it hits the 8, and you already have a kidney stone. So the therapeutic range they established, is for gout and pain in the big toe and frequent urination and things like this.
And what does gout usually result of?
A heavy accumulation of having sweet blood and fungus. And so the kidneys end up getting filled with this uric acid because they can't let it out, just like they can't let protein out. So as these chambers start getting fuller and fuller within the kidney and accumulating this uric acid, you start, developing gout and kidney stones. And so you got to flush that stuff out of there before it turns into a stone, while it's still gravel, while it's still sand. Otherwise, the pain of having a kidney stone is up there with like childbirth. It's not fun. And so it's very rare, though, on a blood test that a doctor will ever order the uric acid marker because, again, mycology is just something they don't focus on. They do in pre-med. You learn about it. But unfortunately, we throw antibiotics at everything.
Okay,
and,
well, let's touch upon a couple of things that you
Sure.
just talked about. You mentioned, this fungus is in most of us.
Among us.
What was that?
The fungus is among us.
Yeah, exactly. So, vampires are the big talk now that, Halloween's around the corner and we've all got the sweet blood.
Oh, my God.
We want to clean this out, before the end of October. So let's talk about, the fasting. You'd put me on something that immediately gave me a flush of a lifetime of calcifications, and it was very painful to pass all of that, which was, in my blood. From having you read my blood, I realized immediately, and I'm somebody who exercises every day. I eat a lot of protein, and my blood results didn't even show that. I have a very strict diet, and it's not that I'm making it strict. It's just I like healthy things, and I'm down to the few foods I really like. And so, and to see that my report wasn't great, I was like, oh my God. And you immediately said, hey, get on this fast. And maybe, I think everyone on here could be applying this fast, even if they do what I did, was take one meal out and then eventually 2 meals. Not everyone can jump in and just do the whole no meals at all and just drink and do the fast. So if you want to touch on, I think some people on here are probably like, well, what can I do about the fungus in me? Help me.
Yes. When we stop feeding the beast, which is the yeast, and we cleanse our system, we stop their development and their spread. It's that simple. Then they dissolve or they break up and they pass from the body. Now, the master cleanse has successfully proven its worth consistently in its eliminating and building ability. It's used with complete safety for every known type of disease. The lemon is the richest source of minerals and vitamins of any foods known to man, and they're available year-round. So I highly encourage people to get into planting lemon and lime trees. The lemon is a loosening and cleansing agent. I mean, it's an important building factor. It's like 50% potassium, just strengthens and energizes the heart. It stimulates and it builds the kidneys and the adrenal glands. The oxygen builds vitality, The carbon in the lemon acts as a motor stimulant. The hydrogen in the lemon activates the sensory nervous system. The calcium strengthens and builds the lungs. The phosphorus in the lemon knits the bones and stimulates the brain for clearer thinking. The sodium in the lemon encourages tissue building. The magnesium in the lemon acts as a blood alkalizer. The iron in the lemon builds the red corpuscle to rapidly correct all forms of anemia, pretty much. I mean, the chlorine in the lemon cleanses the blood plasma. The silicone in the lemon aids the thyroid for deeper breathing. I mean, the lemon is incredible. The Master Cleanse is wonderful. I've done it for 40 days and 40 nights, and I did it again for 42 days and 42 nights. I broke my record. And I've done it for 25 days. In total, I've done over 100 days of this Master Cleanse. I've had my family do it, my clients
do it. You're such a show-off. That is so hard to do.
Yeah, you know, courage and willpower. The spirit of fasting brings about the spirit of healing. I've tried every diet under the book, under the sun, and the one diet that made the most sense was the one that actually was a reduced diet in liquid form. Because when you eat food, that food has to break down, right, into a liquid so that it could be carried by the blood. Well, this cleanse is already in a liquid form, ready to be assimilated. So most people have a hard time of absorbing and assimilating their food because of the yeast and because in the small intestine, which is where the absorption takes place. And so you got to kill that off first. There are layers that have to be peeled. And I find that the time is going to pass anyways, and the food is going to go nowhere. It is a bit challenging your first week. I mean, you want to shoot yourself because you're just, there's so much temptation. It's crazy. But again, we pray during this, to overcome the spirit of temptation. And the spirit of indulgence is one that's wreaking havoc on all of our lives and has been for a very long time, even more so in these times. We're taking a lot of emotion out on consuming foods. But
well, let me ask you a question, because when you told me to get on the Master Cleanse, before you sent me 8 to 10 pages of the details about it, I'd always thought, and I did it 2 other times in my life, that it was apple cider vinegar, cayenne pepper, I think it was honey, and lemon. And your mixture was different. And I think everyone on here wants to hear what your mixture is.
Yeah, so we're not going to do honey at this point. I don't recommend honey. Neither does Stanley Burroughs, who wrote also the book on the Master Cleanse. That's the kind of pre-digested vomit from bees. That's bee food. It's not really a rich source of the minerals. I prefer unsulfured organic molasses, which is rich in minerals. And it's less sugar as well. I think 1 tablespoon is like 10 grams of sugar. Maple syrup is, closer to like 50 grams per tablespoon. Or I think that's per every 2 tablespoons. So it almost works out to be the same. It is good for taste appeal. However, I recommend for those that have sweet blood and they're more so pre-diabetic or diabetic, that you stick with organic molasses to balance insulin, to balance blood sugar out. That's the way to go. And you got to find your
Actually, it was maple syrup, grade
yeah.
B. That was the mixture with sugar and the apple cider vinegar.
And again,
and why not apple cider vinegar? You prefer just...
Well, yeah, apple cider vinegar will feed the fungus. It'll feed the yeast. Anything fermented will feed it. So no kombucha, no sauerkraut, no pickles, no apple cider vinegar, no miso, no mushrooms. Mushrooms are great. They're loaded with medicinal properties. All these things are. But when you have a heavy burden of yeast and fungus in your bloodstream, which you'll never get a conversation out of a doctor because they'll never order those fungal markers, you got to stay away from those foods. You got to go on a vacation from anything that's going to contribute to the yeast and to the fungus. The first thing is to eliminate their feeding source.
How about nutritional yeast?
Nutritional yeast, that's another one that I would take a vacation on, you know, because again, we're trying to eliminate their source, including grains. So apple cider vinegar is not on the list. And maple syrup is just too sweet, especially if you're pre-diabetic. I would recommend that you lean more towards the molasses, because it's also a laxative, it's a mineral builder, it's a cleanser, and it's less in sugar than most of the other sweeteners, but that's what's going to give you the calories to give you the energy to keep going, because during the master cleanse you shouldn't suffer the pangs of hunger, because you're getting a lot of these in during the waking period and during the building period, which is the afternoon, and you're doing this all throughout the day, and the only thing that you can eliminate is mucus, waste, and disease. You cannot eliminate healthy tissue. I mean, the skin disorders disappear. You know, it's incredible what I've noticed on this master cleanse, in particular with blood work. I indulged purposely for a solid year where I consumed oily, greasy, you know, toxic foods, and did this intentionally through the spirit of indulgence, oily, greasy, so that I could see the inflammation and the infection and the fungus and, you know, on my blood test go up. I wanted to make sure that, you know, I felt terrible, I was swollen, all this, that, and the other. And so finally I decided to just do the master cleanse cold turkey. I stopped everything and did it for 40 days and 40 nights. And my God, completely transformed the chemistry on my blood test. My gums, my teeth completely knitted, everything. You know, I work with the holistic dentists, biocompatible dentists, and I'm really big on holistic dentistry and biocompatible materials. But they were shocked to see that the plaque forming. You know, streptococcus mutans, the dental decay, dental caries, right? That all of that was eliminated.
Let's talk about the teeth for a second. I mean, everyone here,
sure,
we're interested in, like, I saw that you said, you know, your teeth are as precious as a diamond, and
more precious than any diamond. That's correct.
Yeah. And dentists, you know, I'm a fan of ozone dentistry, and but they want to drill away a good tooth and remove it and this and that and do the, you know, so let's talk about what your diet does to, you know, your teeth and your gums. Talk about, like, did it keep them from receding, your gums receding? What was the, you know, the direct results of your diet fasting? It changed your teeth.
Oh yeah, gums were definitely receding. That's for sure. You know, every tooth in the body is connected to an organ and to a gland, to a bone, a joint, a vertebrae, you name it. I believe it was Dr. Reinhard Voll who mapped out the electrical relationship of every tooth to an organ or gland in the body using radioisotope tagging methods. Back in the 70s or something. Anyways, this chart has made its way around the world multiple times. They're even connected to emotions, believe it or not. For example, the wisdom teeth are the only teeth that are connected to the emotions of love, joy. And for some reason...
They rip them out.
And what's that?
And they extract them.
Oh, they love to take the wisdom teeth, and the wisdom teeth are there for a reason. I still have mine. I've never really had a problem with them, but some do, where, you know, they may be growing like this, you know, and it's throwing off the alignment of the tooth, the adjacent teeth that are nearby. But they love to extract the wisdom tooth. They're also connected to the heart, to the central nervous system, energy metabolism, the peripheral system. The wisdom teeth are absolutely what needed for sure. But what they do is they inject you with an anesthetic, you know, and that anesthetic is loaded with something called lidocaine. And that lidocaine breaks down to aniline, which is 1 cc is equivalent to about smoking over 50 non-filtered tobacco cigarettes. So that contributes a lot to the heart disease, to the problems that we see with people's blood being toxic, is from all these dental procedures, as well as the materials that are inserted in the mouth. Let's face it, whatever's inserted inside the mouth, you're exposed to 24/7. So that's a lot of time for the body to react to a material that's not biocompatible with the immune system or the nervous system, like dental amalgams, like silver fillings. So there really should be called mercury amalgams, because the silver fillings only contain 20% silver and they contain 50% mercury. Now, if you're an O blood type, which is the most acidic, and you have dental amalgams, you're leaching those out much more than an A blood type is, because they're the least acidic. And so you can see things neurologically start to develop in those individuals that have had a lot of trauma with dentistry, and they have a lot of dental amalgams inserted inside their mouth. It only takes 2 differing metal types to create a chemical reaction when that material is bathed in a liquid conductor, such as your saliva. And so the food is stressed all the way down, because digestion begins in the mouth. And so anyways, every tooth is connected to a bone and to a joint and to an organ, a gland. And what I discovered using kinesiological testing, precise muscle testing called QRA, quantum reflex analysis, or the bidigital low ring technique, Dr. Omura's technology, which is in medical curriculum being used worldwide, is that usually when there's an issue with a tooth in particular, you got to go to the organ and the gland that's connected to that tooth, because chances are there's something going on there, whether it's inflammation or an infection. And when you clear that, you just kind of upregulate the tooth, and the tooth turns back on. And this, of course, when I mention on, I'm referring to the kinesiological testing that we do. And so I showed this to my dentist friend, and he was pretty shocked to see that. And so with that being said, the teeth they're the windows to the soul, right? They're the windows to the organs and to the glands in the body and how they're operating. And so every tooth has a pulp chamber, right? And there's 4 things that are in the supply line that goes into that chamber. You have a vein, a nerve, an artery, and a lymph. So you're going to need vein, artery, nerve, and lymph support. Absolutely, 100%. Now, there's another dentist who's in Omaha, Nebraska, and he founded the Calcium Institute Therapy, and this is Dr. Reinhardt, or Dr. Dehart. Anyways, he's gotten a lot of scrutiny from the dental community, because he discovered using calcium hydroxide and zinc to really restore, teeth and gums, and to push infection out and things like this. And so I advocate his products, absolutely. The toothbrush, the mouth rinse, all that stuff. But I do kinesiological testing as well to test the tooth in question to determine if the organ and gland that's connected to that tooth has infection, or if there's a trauma that may be sedating that tissue, locking the nutrition out, and so now the tooth is getting weak. And so there's all kinds of things that can be done with dentistry, but a dental infection is one of the hardest infections the body has at overcoming, because typically the bacteria is more anaerobic, and they love to dwell in areas that have no air, like the teeth, right? Places in the bone and the jaw and things like that. So what's interesting about dentists, about the teeth, is that they're right where the parathyroid is. And the parathyroid is responsible for the metabolism of minerals, right? Like calcium. And it actually regulates the thyroid, which needs that mineral so that it can keep, right, things alkaline, because it regulates the pH. Right, potential hydrogen, which has everything to do with mineralization. And you can determine what your pH is by taking some litmus paper and testing the first morning urine pH. the first urine stream of the morning, which is, you know, right after 5 a.m. You should see a nice green color on there when you pass it through the urine
And you want to
stream.
be what? Like
About
6.5,
midstream.
7? What's the pH that's a healthy range? 7?
Seven is good, basic pH, neutral. 7 is good, 7.1 is good, 7.2 is good, but it'd be slightly acidic as well. 6.8, 6.9. I mean, this is pretty normal. But according to the CDC, the average American's pH is right around 5.
Wow.
And yeah, that's extremely acidic, because every 1/10 of a point, the pH is off, is a 10-fold deficiency in tissue oxygen. And the thyroid, right, has T4, thyroxine, which is oxygen uptake into every single cell of the body. So your thyroid is essentially idiotic in that you don't target the thyroid, you target the other controllers that regulate the thyroid. Like the parathyroid. But the parathyroid is extremely vulnerable to heavy metal contamination. If you have dental amalgams in there, that shouldn't be in there. You need to use biocompatible materials, you know, that have that Vickers hardness of a normal tooth, so that whatever dental material is inserted is not opposing or wearing out the other teeth. So root canals, I'm not a fan of. There's a study done where 5,000 of them were tested that had root canals, and they all came back with gutta percha, which is very toxic. And 100% of these 5,000 people that had root canals all came back, you know, with this toxin. So again, dentistry is stuck in the Stone Age. That's why I like to work with dentists that are at the cutting edge of using, you know, lasers and things to disinfect 99.9% of, you know, bacteria, rather than sodium hypochlorite, which is maybe only 30% effective as a disinfectant, and then they seal up the tooth afterwards, and now you have all this microbacteria in there that's just going to repopulate, and 2 years down the road you're going to have another problem. But these are silent killers that create infections in the body that the body has a very hard time in addressing and overcoming, is a dental infection. Now, on a blood test, there's something called the basophil, and basophils are the elephant in the room. They're the white whale, the blue whale. They are liberated to come do battle to clean up infections like that, but sometimes they're not always successful. So when looking at a blood test, you can determine if there's such an infection. And so the blood test reveals everything, but you'll never get a conversation out of your doctor about any of that stuff, because
let me interrupt you here real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going on a tangent, please.
You know, it's there. You know, you have so much great information, and we only have 10 minutes left. And
wow.
As I wanted to tell everybody, I got my blood done with Ephraim, and I have my report right here. And he explained to me afterwards. So I went to a LabCorp. He sets up the LabCorp. Then you go there, get your blood drawn, and then he then sets an appointment once he gets the results back, and he'll read you your results, and you'll learn more about your blood than you ever thought possible. I put his email, his website's still being designed. I put his email in the chat so that everyone had that. I see that there's been a lot of different questions, and before we open it up for these last couple minutes for any other questions, belly fat. A lot of people have like either visceral fat or like, you know, shaky little, belly fat. And what's the result of belly fat from?
Well, that's going to go back to uric acid, which is weight at the midsection. That's going to go back to, again, fungus and yeast. Remember, what makes bread rise? Yeast. Makes the tissue rise. It enlarges. That's really what we're talking about here. But it's a conversation that's overrated, you know. Unfortunately, I see it as being kind of the common cause for why these things are happening. But insulin also, elevated insulin has a role in it. Triglyceride fat has a role in it. Having a slow moving metabolism, thyroid has a role in it. Lifestyle has a role in it. But again, most of this stuff is diet and lifestyle induced. But now I want to also mention something that we can talk about on another
A future one. Sure.
series. Yeah, is the interference fields, traumas that could be sedating your abdomen, right, causing this problem as well. So let's say anything on the midline of the body, you took a blow to the forehead or to the nose or to the chin or to the chest, and now this interference field over time is now sedating the meridians that are on that center line, such as your solar plexus, your stomach, your small intestine, your left and your right large intestine. These sort of things have been shown. These interference fields, these traumas. I can't tell you how many times as kids where we've done something where we got injured, we got better again, completely forgot about it, but as the years go by, this injury is actually creating another problem, a distressing symptom as a result of that physical trauma that's pathologically reflexing elsewhere through the meridian system, which is very, very real. And so, for example, you bash your foot and let's say, 10, 20 years goes by. Now you can't use the foot as well. You lose muscle mass. Things just start happening to that left foot because of that trauma that happened. The brain lost its ability to communicate effectively to that foot, and so it can no longer send the intended nutrients to that area so that it could heal. Well, there's a way to address that. Another example I like to use is a woman who has childbirth. During childbirth, she's torn rectally to vaginally. This is called an episiotomy. They stitch her up. Everything's fine. 10, 15, 20, 30 years goes by. She wakes up. She's got right leg edema or left leg edema. This is water in the leg. She goes to the doctor. Doctor gives her a diuretic. Diuretic temporarily reduces the water, but it puts more holes in the kidney and ultimately makes you worse. With the treatments that I do, I can address that scar trauma, and there's no more reflex pattern down the leg. The edema goes away. You can get that healthy energy to flow back into the kidney because the episiotomies are a classic reflex sedation of the kidney, just like an appendectomy scar is a classic sedation of the heart, leading to heart palpitations, arrhythmias, and these sort of things. Dental materials, vaccinations, all of these things are interference fields, guys. The act of puncturing the tissue creates a precision wound, which depolarizes the meridian. So long term, it's not a good thing. Initially, it may be a beneficial thing for you, so you think it's good, but this seems good but isn't hypothesis. So I work with these very special clay packs that are capable of essentially baptizing the tissue and restoring the electrical network of that tissue to exhibit the same characteristics as normal tissue prior to it being baptized, prior to it being traumatized. And so we can upregulate that healthy flow of energy back to the brain so the brain can now remember the communication to that area and start sending the nutrients to that intended area so that the regenerative healing cycle can kick in. Everything from the waist up to the head drains out of the hands. Everything from the waist down drains out of the feet. So the hands and the feet are what I call the downloads. Those are the major entry-exit valves that you have to open up to allow these things to drain the body. Otherwise, you got people walking around with interference fields and traumas, and head traumas are 20 times almost more problematic than any other trauma elsewhere in the body. You can have an incision going down from your collarbone to your abdomen and think, wow, that's a pretty gnarly trauma that needs to be addressed. And you can have a concussion or whiplash from a car accident. You think that the scar trauma would take priority. Well, no, the head trauma does, because every meridian in the body converges to the brain where the skull was knitted as we were developing in the womb. This is called governor vessel 20. And every Chinese acupuncturist doctor knows this. This is also known as your crown chakra, right? So every meridian converges there. They have to report to duty there. This is where there's a little indentation as the skull was fusing in the womb, that's where you'll find that point, and that's a major command center. So any meridian or trauma on the body will short circuit that healthy flow to the brain. That's how the brain can lose communication to the body, and you can experience distressing symptoms. But going back, Andrea, to your question in terms of what causes abdominal bloating and so forth, well, I'm telling you, there's quite a bit of things that can cause that easily, and even being dehydrated can do such a thing. And so, there's it's a
Which
good
a lot of
question that
people
can be
are.
addressed.
A lot of people are dehydrated and don't even realize they are. That's common.
I'm sorry, Andrea, say that again.
As we wrap up our hour, because we're already at 5 o'clock, dehydration is so common. I don't think people realize. As sweet as their blood is, they're probably dehydrated as well.
Dehydration was 3/4 of my problem that I couldn't solve until I discovered the solution. And
which was the fasting?
No, it's actually, this goes into the water spill of drinking water that's negatively charged. So that's a whole nother conversation that we can get into if we have the time for it. But
we'll have to do that on the next call for sure, and answer questions on the next call, because we're at our hour. And this is why Matt said we're jumping right into our speaker, because Ephraim is so well studied about so much about the body. We want to empower people around health and wellness and safety and preparedness. And that's why we have different speakers that can teach us things that, other doctors may have not informed us, as we choose to direct our lives in a brand new way with everything that's coming down in front of us. I think it's inspiring for us to create the new world that we want to see with alternative medicine and with knowledge that's been hidden that we can share with one another in platforms like this. So, Ephraim, thank you so much for...
You're so welcome. Thank you, Andrea.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was endless. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions. I have put your email into the chat a few times here. Your website's not up yet, right?
Nope, that's right. And I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. I've never really had to have a website. The reason why I learned blood tests was so that I could help myself and my family and my close friends. But that's turned into referrals, and so the referrals keep coming, because when you know what you're talking about and you can truly help people get the results they've been looking for permanently, then they just start coming. And so I don't like to, what I call, prostitute myself on the internet by speaking these things. Because let's face it, the establishment doesn't want people like me around.
Well, that's why I was happy to share you here with a lot of warm and wonderful people who are state nationals or becoming state nationals. Yep. And I encourage everyone to get paper, get themselves on the land, get that layer of protection, and then learn from the knowledge that was shared here today. And it would be a pleasure to have you back on like the week of Halloween, since it's a big candy eating week. So I think that'd be a great time to revisit the sweet blood, talk about the water, and to use 30 minutes to answer just questions at that time, because that way everyone can think about, I want to ask him this. And, they'll come ready to have their questions addressed. I want everyone to have plenty of time to Are
we going to give any time to address any of these questions now, or?
Well, our hour is up. And
it's already up. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. That's not fun to do. But if we could have you back in 3 to 4 weeks, I'm sure these great people will be back with their questions and even have more, and maybe they'll bring their family so everyone can sit around and learn at that time. And they realize, who's sitting in front of them has a lot of knowledge, and it's worth inviting your friends and family so they could all benefit.
I'm happy to be present. I'm happy to share the knowledge that has been passed on to me. That's what I'm here to do, is to pass it on. But the website thing, I've never had to market or advertise myself at all. I like to work with people really on a one-on-one basis and really give them the information they need.
Sean, I'm going to dominate you for a second here just because you keep talking. I'm so sorry. I know you got lots to speak right there and really appreciate it. I just putting my stuff in the contact on there. I do need to jump off too as well. My name is Julian. I'm Humboldt. We can talk and help you get a little bit more efficient on where you're at. I hear what you're having the issues with and getting your stuff out, and I've got a bunch of other stuff that may help you. I do yield, and I'm going to get off. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I want to again thank you so much. You're
so welcome. Thank you.
You are.
Thank you, Ephraim. I'm sorry that you're such a wealth of knowledge. I was worried about this, so we'll make sure next time that we have the chance to get questions answered. And the list of things that we put there that you could talk about. I mean, there's a lot more that you didn't even go into that was on the list. And so I hope you'll be willing to come back. Thank you so much for all you're doing and educating people and for coming on today. And hope everybody takes advantage. I'm going to contact you because I'm going to get my blood tested. And I'm very interested in learning what you have to teach me about my blood. And thanks everybody for being here. And please be involved with your militia. And if you're not papered up, please go to the California States Assembly and work on getting papered up.
Can we get a copy of the recording?
You can find it on our website, californiamilitia.com, as soon as we transfer it over, and on it will have that up there until I know what Robert's other channel is. But yes, everyone can watch the recording on there. And with that, I'm going to end the recording. Stop the recording.
Recording stopped.
And bless your heart, Ephraim. Thank you so much. Your presence is just cherished, and I so appreciate your wisdom. And as I've said, this is somebody that I'm having on here because of the knowledge he shared with me when I did my report. So I'm giving this referral to share with all of you. And his link's in there. Email him. It's a very clear process. As soon as you email him, he needs your name, your full name, and your address, and then your full address, and then he'll send you the LabCorps in your area. Then you'll go get your LabCorp, and then you'll pay him when he reads your report. He does not work through insurance. This all goes through him. And I just wanted to let you know it's a quick and easy process. I talked to him one day. Within 24 hours, I had my blood drawn. Within the week, I scheduled with him, and I had my report. So those are the questions some people have wondered. So I wanted to make sure they knew this was a quick and easy process. And as they can tell, they'll learn a lot about their blood. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I chime in real quick? I just want to say
I'm sorry, Mike. Everyone would like.
Yeah, I'll wait. Sorry.
Everyone would like to chime in, but
okay.
We are ending the call. We have a 6 o'clock, a real important 6 o'clock call tonight that we have to prepare for. And Ephraim, again, thank you, my dear, and thank you to everyone that's on the call. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Okay, bye-bye.